Indeed, a lot of the way we approach management and organizational stuff is Anglo-Saxon, and there's nothing wrong about being an Anglo-Saxon, but it doesn't even work in America, okay? So what we are finding out, I remember Americans were going to Asia to explain to the Japanese that if it continued like that, they would create a financial crisis. And the real experiment was well done in America. But it's kind of interesting because MBA education, which are the icons of let's say, Anglo-Saxon thinking, as we say in Holland, how to make the world stop thinking, so you internationalize MBAs. By the way, I have an MBA, so I know it from the inside. I have a French mother, so an excuse for anything. But it's not helping the world that we have created, especially recently. And let me tell you what I mean with that. I live in Amsterdam, at least in the weekend. And there are dramatic changes that have happened that are much more dramatic than what I hear every day, that the speed of change is so big. I heard that 40 years ago, so there's nothing new about that. But what is really new, and we can prove it statistically, is that the diversity has increased in our face. There was always a lot of diversity, but the Americans were in America, the French, thank God, were in France, the Chinese were in China, and it was nicely organized. And you know, the good news is that if you are in a nation, half a logic, and this is a compliment to America, is good enough, okay? And the other half obviously is in France, and that was good enough. But now I live in Amsterdam, and 55% of people younger than 20 don't have Dutch parents, and they live in Amsterdam. It was 7% 10 years ago. There are dramatic changes in the way we mix. And it's an illusion to think that therefore we all get the same. First of all, we don't have a clue of what to get the same about, because the Dutch say be Dutch, and they say yes, and Dutch means that 55% is not. People get utterly confused, and all our models are bipolar. Now, and this is one of the biggest problems, that bipolar thinking worked in half logics, but is not very effective in multicultural environments. And multicultural much more than passport mixing, but it's gender. We even invited females in business. Can you imagine how big a mistake can you make, right? I'll come back to that, don't worry, in a bit. I'm so respectful. And then we have, obviously, age. Now suddenly young people get an enormous amount of power because they get some tricks that older people don't get, which become very important, like social media, in business, etc. So we have never met so much diverse ways of thinking, and our models are still from, and this is a compliment, the 1950s. How many people fill in Myers-Briggs every year? And I ask Myers-Briggs people, please explain me, because you're so much contradicting wonderful founders of Myers-Briggs thinking. Can you explain me, if I score high on thinking, why do I need to score low on feeling? I never understood that. I never thought about that. I teach MBAs, and I ask them the famous question, why would an organization centralize and why would an organization decentralize? Now, how do you recognize an MBA? They're ready with the answer before you end the question. And they say things like, you need consistency, economies of scale, and standardization. That's why you centralize. And you decentralize for being close to the customer, right? And you get lists like Piero was just showing, one side, the other side. And I want to teach them a very simple thing, that the best way to increase your thinking is to connect it to your feelings, and vice versa. And that's what was Carl Jung. Carl Jung's original writing, there were 9 yin and yang diagrams explaining that thinking became deeper if you connected it to your feelings, and that feelings helped you at, shall I go on? And then you get a questionnaire, is it A or is it B? Now, can I help you by asking the following question? What is the only reason for a company to centralize and the only reason for a company to decentralize? And the answer I want to hear, because I'm not really interested in your answer, because I don't want to add to the list, is that the only reason for centralization is decentralization. Because if you don't decentralize, there's nothing to centralize. Got it? Now you say, is this a word game? Now let's take our human body. Is that centralized or decentralized? And we all know the answer is yes. We namely have centralized certain things to allow for more decentralization. So why the hell, if we measure corporate culture, we have the degree of centralization? And if you score high, you score low on decentralization. Bloody nonsense!